Hello everyone, my name is Mike Kenichi and welcome to Hometown Heroes. We have a very special guest today. If you've grown up in the town of Derby, you've heard many names, many legendary names. Lou DeFilippo, Charlie DeCenzo, John Pagliaro, Tony Passander. But you can't stop there. You have to think about people behind the scenes who have done a lot of work for the town of Derby. And no better than our guest today, Bill Pucci. And Bill, I want to thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, Bill, we're going to go right into your football career at Derby. You were a player for Derby, I believe, in 59 and 1960?
Right.
Right. Now, you had went to Notre Dame of West Haven your first 2 years. After your sophomore year, you decided to return to Derby. What made you come back to Derby?
Well, I really didn't want to go to Notre Dame in the first place.
Right.
My father and mother said you have a better chance of getting a better education and getting into college from a nice school like Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was a good school, but I just missed all my friends. And from the time I was a little guy, my father used to take me to all the Derby games, and I used to say, someday I'm going to play on this field. Okay?
Right.
So after my sophomore year, I told my parents I want to go back to Derby. And so they said, well, if that's what you really want to do, they don't want to hold me back. So I started in Derby. And once I got to Derby and I did well in the classroom, I did pretty well on the field, well, they were happy then, you know?
Right.
And really, that's it in a nutshell. That's the reason why I started playing for the Red Raiders, and I started for 2 seasons and played offense and defense, and the rest is history.
Right. Now, one of the big claims to fame for you is both your junior and senior year. I think your junior year, you scored a big touchdown against Ansonia early on in the game.
Right.
And then your senior year, you ended up scoring the winning touchdown against Ansonia. Let me ask you this, Bill. This was before Derby was really starting to get big in football.
Right.
How was the rivalry with Ansonia back then? And not just that, how was the fan base back then? I mean, did they take losses hard, or were they not really ready?
No, the fan base was big.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't have a very good team my junior and senior year. We won a few games, but again, as you mentioned, we beat Ansonia 2 years in a row. I always tease my son, who graduated from Ansonia.
Right.
When I played, we never lost to Ansonia. You know, he's given the little needle, you know.
Right.
But the rivalry was just starting to become big when I became a junior.
A junior.
Yeah. And once we beat them in 59, in 1960 we beat them again. And from 1959 to 1975, Ansonia only won 1 game, and we tied 2 with them, 61 and 67. And a lot of people that are out there today that are young, they probably don't want to believe that. But it's history. That is.
Right.
Right? Out of, 17 years, we won 15 games or 14 games.
It's hard to imagine
I know,
these days.
I know. The rivalry was big during that era because Ansonia always had good teams. And for some odd reason, even when the Ansonia was good, Derby they beat them. You know, it was crazy. Okay? And I had the pleasure of covering a lot of those games from 1967 on.
Right.
You know, and the thing is that right now, I don't really think the rivalry is as big. Number one, you don't get the people that come to the games anymore.
No.
And number two, we haven't beaten Ansonia since 2002, meaning we, Derby. And I believe a rivalry is like this. A rivalry is when 2 teams that fight against each other on the field, and you go to the game and you don't know who's going to win.
Right.
Right? You just don't know. Okay? Because a lot of times there were games where Derby was favored and Ansonia won, and there were games when Ansonia was favored and more times Derby won. You know?
Right. Now let me, another thing I think though that hurts the rivalry, it may not be as big as what you just mentioned, but I also think playing it on Friday nights is not a good idea. It was always good when that game was played Saturday afternoon, and I think that's another reason the rivalry has kind of lost some of its, meaning. What do you think?
Yeah, you might have a good point there. I enjoyed the games against Ansonia during the day myself.
Right.
Better than Friday night. But that's up to the schedule makers. You know, we have no control over that.
Right. Now, let's talk about your senior year here. You scored the winning touchdown against Ansonia. Now, I think you guys, you know, your record wasn't that great, but you came into that game. I think you guys were home that game.
Yes.
Go over that game to me, kind of break down, you know, what that game was like. And I also want to ask you, too, did scoring that winning touchdown against Ansonia kind of help for a difficult season?
Yeah. The thing is, I was originally going to be the GOAT in that game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I always ran back punts. And I never called a fair catch. And my father used to scream at me all the time, right? You're going to get hurt, or somebody's going to make you fumble the ball. You know, well, against Ansonia, I caught a punt, and just as I was bringing it back in, somebody hit me, and the ball rolled out of my hands, and Ansonia recovered on about the, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 yard line, and Ansonia scored on that series, making 6-0.
Right.
Okay, and then that during the course of the first half, we were really doing very well. We kept moving the ball, but never got in the end zone. Okay,
Right.
So now my uncle John Tiano, who was a terrific football player for Derby,
Right.
and went to Manhattan College and got a scholarship there. As I came out of the locker room at halftime, he says to me, "Billy," this is how he talked. "Billy," he says, "you're getting into the secondary, but then you just keep going straight." He says, "If you run to a sideline," he says, "I run all those guys," right?
Right.
And so the first or second series of the second half, we ran a draw play. I went up the middle. There was nobody there, so I cut to the left sidelines, the same side as the Ansonia staff and players were on, and he was right. Once I got towards the sidelines and I cut it up the field, there was nobody there, and I scored, I think, on a 55-yard run, or so. I can't remember exactly, but
Wow.
50 or more, and that tied the game. And then in the fourth quarter, we drove down to a touchdown with about 2 minutes left in the game.
Right.
Okay, and this was the crazy part. Ansonia started driving on us, but we stopped them inside the 10-yard line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what happens is that there wasn't much time left, so the coach told the quarterback, "Just take a knee." Okay?
Yeah.
So he took a knee, but he was going back too far. Like I told him in the huddle, John, his name was John, you can't go back 3 or 4 yards. Go back a yard and get down.
Right.
Right? Well, anyway, on third down, the coach sends in a play and says, "Run into the end zone and take a safety."
Oh, wow.
Right? Because there wasn't so much time left.
Yeah.
So he runs into the end zone, and he has the ball out like this, like a loaf of bread.
Oh, man.
Right? We're yelling, "Get down, get down."
Yeah.
So he gets down, and so now the game is at 12-8 now. Okay, and Don Carney, God rest his soul, one of our terrific players that we had on our team. He was also our punter, and he used to kick off. Well, he punted a ball like he never punted in his life. In his own 20, he kicked it over the head of the Ansonia return men.
Yeah.
Right, and it rolled almost like towards the end zone. Well, by the time they picked it up, they were only about out to the 25 or 30-yard line.
Right.
Okay. Well, they had a pass in order to catch up because there wasn't much. There was less than a minute to go.
Yeah.
And Bud Searles picked one off at midfield, and that was the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
You know.
What was the feeling like? I mean, again, it had not, like I said, it had not become as big of a rivalry as it would become. I know it was getting there, but I mean...
But that made it 2 years in a row.
Right.
So we were on, quote, the roll against them.
Yeah, because I think before that, they had a lot of success against Derby.
They beat us 9 years in a row.
Right. So, I mean, that had to... I mean, again, it was not the best year for Derby football, but I guess if you could have one moment, it would be beating Ansonia and then scoring the winning touchdown against Ansonia. I mean, that's something that, you could take with you forever.
Right.
That, nobody could take away.
Well, way back then, the quarterback called the plays. You're going to laugh. This is true.
Really?
Yep. So first down and when we were inside the 5-yard line, Frank Ishman was in the backfield. He was the fullback.
Right.
So John and him were best friends. So he, on first down, he gave the ball to Frankie, right?
Yeah.
Frankie was yet to emerge as a very good player during that season, right? It wasn't until the following year. So he gives him the ball on first down, nothing. Gives him the ball on second down, nothing. So I says to Gooch, his nickname was Gooch. I says, Gooch, give me the ball, I'll get it in.
Right.
Now that sounds cocky,
right?
But I had a lot of confidence in the way I could run with the football, and
I think every teenage kid at that age,
Yeah.
Is a little arrogant.
so he gives me the ball,
times.
and I broke a couple of tackles en route to the end zone. It was only like about a 4 or 5 yard run, right? But I have a picture of that winning touchdown in my family room.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Somebody Eddie Cotter took a picture of me going into the end zone,
right.
from like he was like kneeling by the fence of the end zone, and he caught me head on coming in, right? And so it was such a beautiful picture, so I got someone to paint it, and I got a 3 foot by 2 foot painting of that end zone shot.
Oh, wow,
It's really beautiful.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And well, that was actually I did pretty well every game, but that was the highlight of my career, I would say.
Right. Hey, that's a highlight they can never take away.
No,
you know?
that's
If
true.
you had to have one, I'm sure that would be the one.
Yeah, everybody has a career day.
Right. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. You're out of high school. I think you're probably about 5 or 6 years out of high school. And you get a job working for the Evening Sentinel, I believe in 1967, covering games for the Evening Sentinel. How
Right.
did that come about?
Well, prior to '67, that was my first year that I covered games full time. Okay, I was Derby's beat writer. But
Right.
prior to that, I used to, Lime Katzman, who I consider my mentor, he taught me everything I knew about writing. He gave me some games to do, some Shelton games, some Ansonia games. But when Bill McAllister came to coach in 1967, he asked for me because I did a few other games, and he liked my writing skills, I guess, right?
Right.
So he asked for me to be the beat writer for his team, and that's how it started. And then Lou DeFilippo came about.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. Before we're going to get to Lou in a second, but you also had a full-time job.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was a part-time job, even though sometimes it felt like full-time work. How many hours a week would you say you had to put in with researching, interviewing coaches, et cetera?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 hours a week.
Oh, so it wasn't.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because remember, this is only a once a week deal,
right.
right? And I didn't cover basketball or baseball until like the early '70s.
Right.
I just did football. And then I had a column, Lime Katzman allowed me to have a column called Focus on Football.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and after every weekend of Valley football games, I used to write like a synopsis of the key plays, and that's when I got the quotes from the coaches and
Right.
that matter.
Now, we just mentioned Lou a little bit. You started really covering Derby in a time where Derby football really took off. Ron Carbone kind of got it started with the winning tradition.
Right.
Bill McAllister did have an undefeated season, his only season there. But then 1968 rolls around. Lou DeFilippo comes to Derby. Number one, what was that like when you heard he was going to become the coach? And number two, what was it like covering the Lou DeFilippo era?
Well, number one, I never heard of the man.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
When he got the job by the Board of Education, they put a little synopsis of his prior career and how he played for the Giants and Fordham and all that.
Right.
But he was the nicest guy to work with, really was. He was a reporter's dream. He would always have, win, lose, or draw, he always had good quotes.
Right.
He never downgraded his kids. Whenever they lost, he took the blame,
Right.
And he was just terrific to deal with. Never had any problems with Bill McAllister or Carbone.
Right.
But Lou was easy to deal with, and of course I'd known Charlie DeCenzo since I'm a few years older than him, but he was terrific.
Right.
In fact, I think Charlie DeCenzo did such a wonderful job with Derby football because he didn't have the talent when he coached that Lou had.
Right.
But he got the best out of every kid, and that's why he won 80 games in 10 years.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah, and 5 championships. If you go over 3 Hoosies, 2
right.
state titles, I mean, pretty impressive track record.
Right.
Now, your brother, I think, played for Lou. Am I correct? He was the quarterback. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, again, nobody's going to take shots at kids, but at the same time, you have to be fair. Was it tough to have to cover Derby, having your brother play? Because, there's going to be games where he might have a bad game or something like that. Was it tough covering them back then when he was a player?
Well, the thing is, I didn't really, during my brother's years at quarterback, I didn't cover the games. I just had my column.
Just your column, yeah.
Focus on football.
Right.
And, of course, if you wrote anything really dynamic about Jim Pucci, of course, all the fans would say, "Oh,
he's playing
writing up his kid,
right?
His brother, actually. A lot of people thought he was my kid because I'm 21 years older than him,
right?
But other than a few, nicks and scratches that they threw at me, I did okay, and he was a real good quarterback. I mean, he held all the records before Krieger broke them.
Right.
Adam Ives, I think, had just one of the records. He had all the rest.
Wow.
So he was a real good quarterback.
Who's the better athlete, Jim Pucci or Bill Pucci?
Jim Pucci.
Now, let's fast forward a little bit. You leave the Sentinel in, 1985, I believe, and you went to the Valley Drummer.
Right.
What was the reason behind that?
Well, the Valley Drummer, like the old Godfather saying, is they made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Right.
They put me on a salary, okay?
Yeah.
And I went to the office 2 or 3 days a week after I finished up my full-time job, and there was a little bit more work, so in reality they gave me a little bit more money, okay?
Right.
But then in 1990, Hometown Publications ate up the Valley Drummer and the Suburban News, because Jack Young, who owned both newspapers, he decided to retire.
Oh, okay.
So they bought him out, and then when Hometown Publications bought him out, they had no room for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what happens is, I called Lancaster and I asked him, "Is there any chance I can come back to the Sentinel?" So he called me back in about a half hour and said, he goes, "You want the job? You got it."
Oh, wow.
So then I asked them if I could write. All I did was write a column, though. I didn't cover any games.
Right.
But I asked them if I can use my Pucci's pen logo that emerged from the Valley Drummer.
Right.
And they said yes. They gave me the permission to do that. I asked Jack Young if I can do it, and he said sure. And what happens is the rest is history, because from 1990 to 1992, right, I wrote a column in the Sentinel, and then in 93, the Sentinel went out of business, got bought out by the Connecticut Post.
Right. That was a dark day, in my opinion, in the Valley.
Yeah. Everybody called it a rag, the Sentinel, but boy, I tell you really miss it, even to this day.
That paper always had everything. I mean, that was a great paper. It was a shame to see it go.
Yeah, it was all Valley all the time.
And you can't duplicate something like that. You really can't.
Look at the coverage now that the Valley teams get. If you don't get into the tournament, if you don't have undefeated records or a top of the league that you play in, you don't get any ink from either the Connecticut Post or the Register. I always tease my son about that.
Right. Yeah, it's too bad that it went out. Now, after the Sentinel, you went to a paper called the Valley Times.
Right.
And you would finish your writing career there. Close to 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
From 93 to 2013.
Right, 20
years.
Yeah. Now
they went out of business.
Yeah, hard to believe. But how did you, I mean, you took on a lot of responsibilities there, more so, I think, than the drummer. And
Yeah, more than the drummer.
You were
right.
the sports editor.
Right, I had like 4 guys that worked for me.
Did you enjoy that paper? I mean,
it was terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, I mean, that was a weekly thing, and that kind of gave the Valley people something to still have. You know, it's never gonna be like the Sentinel.
No.
But at least it was something that was still there for the Valley to look at, and it still covered high school sports.
Right, and the thing is that we covered every single team, including O'Brien Tech.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important to give all the teams their due. You know, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. I must admit, I took a lot of heat about not covering things like track and field.
Yeah.
You know, like soccer.
Right.
But there's only so much room.
Right.
So we covered football, basketball, boys and girls, baseball, softball, you know, for the girls. And we gave them good play. I mean, if you see the copies you saw copies of our paper. We didn't just give them 2 or 3 lines. We gave them like 2 or 3 paragraphs apiece.
Right.
You know, and I had some good people who wrote for me. You know, like Steve Feiner wrote. You know, and believe it or not, Sean Barker, who was the sports editor of the Valley of the New Haven Register.
Yeah.
In his early days, he worked for me at the Valley Times.
Wow, I did not know that. Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
As you know, most of the people out there listening, my son Michael works for the New Haven Register. He's the football coordinator and coordinator.
Yeah.
He's been there 12 years already.
Right. No, I mean, obviously, I got to believe that he saw you writing for years, and it was something he wanted to do as well. You know?
Well,
I think if you love sports or, you know, you love writing, it's definitely something that you would want to do.
Well, he majored in journalism at Southern Connecticut.
Right.
And he did you know, got real good grades, and he when he applied, this is funny, he applies to the Register. He saw a square in the New Haven Register on the sports page, wanted full-time staff sports writers, apply to so-and-so. Now they had a sports editor then that had a long German name. I can't even remember it. I really can't.
Right.
Sad. But you know, I'm 71 years old now. Sometimes the mind doesn't click in like it should as quickly as when I was your age. You know? So anyway, he applies for the job and he's looking at the resume and he says, "You related to that guy down in the valley, Bill Pucci?" So he says, "Yeah, that's my father." He says, "It is, huh?" He says, "Well, I read his stuff, and if your stuff is as good as his, you got a job." That's how he got the job. It's the true story.
Wow. Well, maybe, I mean, I think in any type of field, you have to know somebody to get that foot in the door, you know? And I mean, like I said, you've been doing this, probably at the time when you got the job, you were doing this close to 40 years. So, I mean.
Yeah. My son got the job in 2003.
2003.
Right.
Wow, that has been a long time. I didn't even realize that. Now, one of the things that you did, and it's kind of hard to believe because, you know, you've covered high school sports for so much. You actually did a baseball show with Rich Marazzi.
Yeah, it's called Inside Yankee Baseball.
Inside Yankee Baseball, and I think you started that in 1998, if I'm not
98,
mistaken.
right.
And number one, how did that come about? And number two, it had to be a pleasure to work with such a professional guy like Rich.
Oh, Rich was great.
Yeah.
I've known Rich many, many years. I had his son on my Little League team because I did a lot of coaching baseball.
Right.
Little League 4 years and Babe Ruth, all in Derby and in Ansonia, 2 different stints. Right. And I added up to like almost 20 years.
And I think people probably don't realize this about Rich because, you know, people that follow the Yankees and stuff like that, which he covered for years, and he's been an author of many books. He also was a high school basketball coach. He coached Emmett O'Brien boys and I believe Emmett O'Brien girls over the years, you know?
Yep. He was a terrific basketball coach.
Right.
You know, when he started the baseball show, I actually questioned him and said, "How do you know so much about baseball?" He goes, "Because I'm a historian." He says, I've been looking up things all my life about baseball. And he used to say that when he was like a little kid, that he used to open up the window of his house during the summer.
Yeah.
And he used to mimic calling play-by-play of a game.
Right.
I said, you did? He goes, yeah. He says, I said, you were a little strange. He goes, yeah. He says, but you know what? Look where it got me. I says, yeah, you're right. We started out at WICC.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Then we were there for a few years, and we were like a victim of our own success because they kept going up on the broker fee.
Right.
You know? So from WICC, we got a chance to go on to ESPN 1300.
Okay.
And we were on there for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, for some odd reason, it didn't work out anymore. I think they had a lot of this isn't printed in stone, but I think they had a lot of in-house programming. They really didn't need our show.
Right.
Because we were on there from 10 to noon on Saturday. Okay.
Now, he, I think he did a couple of shows on WFAN. Did you
Yeah, he
ever
did.
do any of those shows
No.
with him? No.
No.
I mean, that's pretty big for him.
His big thing is that he's a rules consultant for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
For the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, Toronto Blue Jays, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I think one more, but I can't remember which one.
Right.
But
now,
he-
how did he go about asking you to do the show with him? Was it just something that was, you know, he was looking for a partner? How did you go about getting that
Yeah,
job?
he was looking for a partner.
Yeah.
So he asked me if I was interested in doing it.
Right.
Because he knew that I had the knowledge about baseball that he wanted. I was a big Yankee fan. I knew a lot about the Yankees.
Must have been great for you guys to cover the Subway Series back in 2000.
Well, yeah. The only bad thing about it was that he had press credentials for almost every game, but
Right.
he couldn't get press credentials for me because they only allowed. You know, he wasn't like a quote a full-time
Right.
writer or a full-time announcer. So they, you know, but he got one for him, which is good because he used to work for Yankees Magazine.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I think he even did Old Timers game a few years, right? He
Oh yeah,
umpired.
he umpired. He umpired a few games of the Old Timers.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's pretty impressive.
It is.
And you did that with him probably 15 years. I mean, time goes by quick, but I mean, at least over 10, I would say.
From 98 to 2010 or
Wow.
11, around there.
So 13 years, yeah.
You know, don't
It's a
don't
lot.
hold me to that, but it's around that much.
Right. And I mean, like I said, that had to be great doing games with him. And I mean, just your body of work. You've done so many things over the last 50 years, I should
Yeah.
say. And we're going to get into more of that in part 2 of our segment with Bill Pucci. We're going to talk about a couple of things, some big games he's covered, some games he saw. And we're also going to talk about the Albarella banquet, which Bill has been involved with for at least 40 years. Till next time, this is Mike Kenichi for Hometown Heroes. Goodbye, everyone. Talk next about